Most of you know I'm a real fan of Thomas Jefferson, so I thought it was appropriate. The Doc Owens Show is moving on up to connectpal.com. All you need to do to follow us to our new address is go to docowenshow.com. That's docowenshow.com. Signing up will take you about 2 to 3 minutes, and you're done. You will receive a daily notice of our new broadcast 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. So go to docowenshow.com and join us today.
We were all Americans before the hyphens came. People cared about who you were and less about your name. 'Cause we were all Americans before the hyphens came.
Howdy, folks. You are listening to the Doc Owen Show. This is Doc Owen. Welcome back or welcome aboard. We are glad to have you. We have got a lot to cover tonight. It has been a very long time since my lead-in announcer has been the President of the United States, but I'm quite flattered that he did that for us this evening. We will talk about that in just a minute in 2 sections of the show. First thing is, as you know, but we always put it out there, we are all over the social media. Everything is Doc Owen Show, DOCOWENSHOW. It's the handle on Twitter. That's the name of the Facebook page. That's who we are on Tumblr, Pinterest, Instagram, about.me. I don't know. The number keeps growing. But we're out there on far more than we can track. We track the primary 2. So get a hold of us there. Pay attention, like us, friend us, follow us. There's a lot going on, and that's what we use as our mechanism to reach out at all points in time. As we said last week, and I will reiterate this week, next Thursday, as you know, is Thanksgiving Day. Thanksgiving evening. We will not have a live broadcast next Thursday. I've gone out to the archives. I think I can put together the show that I did last year, which also happened to fall on Thanksgiving Day, and do a Thanksgiving Day show for you. It really had to do with the history of Thanksgiving. It was a lot of fun to research. There's an awful lot about the holiday that you may or may not know that I found to be quite interesting. So hopefully I'll be able to grab that. If I am, and then can figure out the technology, we will queue it up to be broadcast at this normal time on Thursday night. So, and it'll go into being a podcast. So you're welcome to tune in. I understand and really would appreciate and urge you to spend time with family and friends and just kick back and take a break from what we normally talk about on the radio show. Actually, the one that I'll broadcast has absolutely nothing to do with politics or current events. It is about the holiday of Thanksgiving and its origin. We always start the show with a quote on leadership from my friends at Crown Grace International, and this one is no exception. It's very brief. It is not by any particular author. The author is unknown, but I thought it quite pertinent, and you might want to just kind of make a mental note of it. It says, do something today that your future self will thank you for. Think about that one a minute. Earlier in the week, matter of fact, I believe it was Monday, we had the opportunity, we did another live broadcast from the Republican Men's Club of Bexar County. That's going to be a monthly event. They are getting some excellent programs put together. They've got some very good speakers that is very informative, and we've been asked to live broadcast from that. So that'll be done on a monthly basis. one of the things that was brought to our attention this last Monday, there was a young lady there by the name of JC, and I am looking for her last name, JC Derby, Jayci, D as in David, ERB as in Benny, Y, JC Derby. She was something. Let me tell you a little bit about what she's done, and I will tell you that in the very near future we're going to have her on and do an interview with her. She was quite an engaging young lady, and exactly the type of young lady that we want to, as citizens of the U.S., we want to encourage her involvement. In August of 2009, JC's grandfather and hero, a fellow by the name of Charles W. Charlie Moore, passed away. At the time, she was 11 years old, and she began an organization called JC's Wreath for Heroes. And it was an effort to ensure that all the heroes at Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery here in San Antonio had a wreath placed on their grave at Christmas time. When she went out there to visit her grandfather, she noticed that there were a lot of graves that didn't have a wreath placed on them, and she felt like they deserved it. So she started her little JC's Wreath. It has grown into an organization called Wreaths Across America. It is a nationwide effort. Her focus is still on the Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery, but there are other chapters around the country that are focused on military cemeteries in their area. So if you would like, and I know that JC would greatly appreciate it, go out to her Facebook page, and it's facebook.com, and then JC's, Jaycis, Wreath, WREATHSFOR, for Heroes, and read about it on the Facebook page, and I think that's where you can also make a donation, or it has a link to a donation. I will put that out on the Doc Owen Show Facebook page as well. I just think that it is a very, very worthwhile effort that she has put together, and would like to support it as much as I can. So that tells me if she was 11 years old in 2009, she was 16 when she talked to us just the other day. Absolutely amazing, and what she's doing is really cool. I would be remiss, and you'd think I wasn't paying attention, if I had not listened to / watched, which I did. I more listened to it than I watched it. I just can't go with the visual part. President Obama's speech tonight from the White House, his little 10 to 12 to 14-minute delivery of what his plans are in terms of his executive order on immigration. And as the title of these shows have become since the recent midterm elections, time will tell. That was my stance on the elections. This is time will tell number 3. That's also my stance on what he just said about his executive order on immigration. I will tell you this. It was a very polished, well-written, and well-scripted presentation. My problem with it is I can't believe a word that he says. For 6 years, he has delivered messages that really sound good. But his actions belie his words. And that's a problem. It's a problem for me anyway. And I think it's a problem for a lot of other people. It's kind of a critique, if you will, of the speech. I'm going to get into the whole immigration issue towards the end of the show. And because parts of the show, I always like to connect the dots. So part of what we're going to do tonight is to connect some dots that may or may not be apparent, but they are dots that are connected to the presentation that he gave tonight, trying to bring illegal immigrants out of the shadows. That was the message he was trying to deliver, that they're here anyway, they're productive citizens, and we need to bring them out of the shadows so that they can pay their taxes and become, he didn't say it because he knew the firestorm that would initiate, but become legal American citizens. All right? First of all, he quotes numbers at the beginning of the speech that you just, there's no way you can believe them, and you can instantly fact check them and document them and know that he's just blowing it out his Watusi for the low information voter. Overarching of all of this, as you are probably aware, the speech was not even covered on the mainstream media. It was not on any of the three major networks. The primary place that you had to go was to the internet, or, wait for it, Univision, the Spanish-speaking national television station, the NBC, ABC, CBS of Hispanics, carried the speech. Yeah, he was telling the truth. So he did three basic elements in the speech that are always there. I've already brought one of them up. He has been proven for 6 years to very much to be less than truthful with the American public. Think Obamacare and work your way down from there. All right. Number 2, as every good salesman is trained to do, when you know your buyer has some built-in objections to your product or service, you overcome those objections before you ever pitch what you're going to pitch. If you go back and listen to his presentation, you will notice very early on he addressed the objections that have been surfacing in the media, Twitter, Facebook, wherever. I followed the Twitter feed. But everything that's going on about why immigration is a bad idea, he addressed that right up front. All right? And number 3, in standard operating procedure, he blamed Republicans. If it weren't for the Republican House of Representatives, he wouldn't be having to do this, because the Senate had delivered a bill to them, and they've not done anything with it. A Democrat, Harry Reid-controlled Senate. I bet that was a doozy of a bill that he sent over there for the Republican-controlled House to take a look at. And one final note, and then I'm going to take a little break, grab a sip of water. We're going to go into a few other things that have been completely set aside because of this immigration issue for the last 72 hours or so, but still need to be addressed. And I just drew a mental blank on what it was. That's a sign that I need a sip of water. So I'm going to grab a sip of water, listen to our little ditty, and I will be right back.
Rally the youth, come on, let's go. We've been asleep for way too long. The time has come to break the chains that bind our freedom. 9 to 5, you think you've done all that's needed. Judging by your paycheck, do you think you succeeded?
Howdy, folks. Welcome back. You're listening to the Doc Owen Show. This is Doc Owen. Welcome aboard. We are glad you're here. We just wrapped up a little very quick critique of the president's presentation tonight on immigration. And one of the things that I was talking about was it was perfectly scripted, as any good salesman is trained to present. All right? Let me give you, I'll lighten it up just a little bit here. I'm going to give you a clever little email that I got from a friend of mine, and the title of the email was A Born Salesman. A born salesman, Ollie, the smoothest talking Norsky in the Minnesota National Guard, got called up to active duty. Ollie's first assignment was in a military induction center. Because he was a good talker, they assigned him the duty of advising new recruits about government benefits, especially the GI life insurance, to which they were entitled. The officer in charge soon noticed that Ollie was getting a 99% sign-up rate for the more expensive supplemental form of GI insurance. This was remarkable because it cost these low-income recruits $30 per month for the higher coverage compared to what the government was already providing at no charge. The officer decided he'd sit in the back of the room at the next briefing and observe Ollie's sales pitch. Ollie stood up before the latest group of inductees and said, "If you have to normal GI insurance and you go to Afghanistan and get yourself killed, the government pays your beneficiary $20,000. If you take out the supplemental insurance, which costs only $30 a month, then the government going to pay your beneficiary $200,000. Now," Ollie concluded, "which bunch do you think they're going to send to Afghanistan first?" Ollie was pretty clever. That may have what we just got from the president. As is well known, a rather, if you ask me, tired phrase, certainly over the last 6 years, from the president's speech about immigration, all I was doing was sitting there thinking, yeah, the devil is in the details. So, back to the theme of my shows, time will tell. The devil is in the details. One of the problems, and you know that we have talked on the show about the urbanization of America and people moving into the cities, and basically, in a lot of cases, Detroit is the worst case, but it's happening elsewhere. They completely destroy the city. Immigration will this untold look the other way, no deportation for 5 million citizens. Where do you think those folks are going to wind up living? They're going to wind up living in large metropolitan areas, which brings down the wages, it brings in crime, it does all sorts of things that completely undermine urban areas. The title of this article was "Super Amnesty Will Turn Every City into Detroit." And if you think about it, it can absolutely happen. 5 million folks is a lot of people to absorb. So just to give you a few legitimate numbers, homicide rates overlap with unemployment rates, especially when accounting for the demographic populations of young minority men who are statistically more likely to kill or be killed. 92% of black male teens in Chicago don't have a job. Did you hear that? 92% of black male teens in Chicago, where the murder rate is through the roof, don't have a job. In Detroit, 50% of black men are unemployed. It's not that there aren't any jobs, but the entry-level jobs have been mostly going to immigrants. The Center for Immigration Studies found that under Obama, 2/3 of jobs went to immigrants, both legal and illegal. Throw in a massive illegal alien amnesty, such as the one presented tonight, and the rush of illegal aliens into the country will turn the unemployment figures of every city into Detroit and Chicago. One of the bullet points tonight was this only applies to people who have been here for 5 years or, and here's the devil in the details, parents of people who have been here for 5 years. So you've got a bunch of what we used to call anchor babies that are here, they've been here, they've been going to our schools, etc., etc. And now their parents can come over here tomorrow and be qualified for this program. So the 5 million number that are here is the tip of the iceberg, depending on how many family members have yet to join these folks. The black male unemployment rate in New York was at 33%. All right. The same process will take place in most major American cities. The United States of America does not have a shortage of workers. What we have is a shortage of jobs. It is very similar to the situation when we were back having the budget problem. It wasn't that we weren't taxed enough. It wasn't that, and still isn't, the fact that the federal government doesn't have enough income. It's the fact that the federal government has a spending problem, not a revenue problem. That was said time and again. I dropped one of my stories. One of the things that I'd like to point out is another piece I got here that was from the taxfoundation.org. Since we're talking about taxes. You have to think about buying power, okay? When you live somewhere or you contemplate moving elsewhere, you have to think about what it's going to take to maintain your standard of living. Because a dollar is not necessarily worth $1 elsewhere. This one makes it a little easier. It talks about the value of $100, okay? And it gives the value of the purchasing power, the buying power of $100 in every state in the union, based on the prices of goods and services in that state. For example, $100 in the most in states in the southern United States, red states, Republican governors, tightly fiscally run states. Mississippi, $100 is worth $115.74. In Arkansas, it's worth $114.16. And in Missouri, it's worth $113.51. In addition, Tennessee, Texas, it's 103.63. So all across the South, as opposed to Democrat-controlled states. In California, it's worth $88.57. In Hawaii, it's worth $85.32. In New York, the value of $100 is $86.66. if you look at this map that was provided, which I know you can't see, so I'll color it in for you, every state that is run by a Republican governor, a.k.a. a red state, the value of $100 is over $100. Conversely, every state run by a blue administration, it's worth less than $100. Does that compute for you guys? I mean, it's the it's the same thing about those states that will attract the illegal aliens. You wind up, as I put out on a tweet, legals when it comes to immigration. Legal immigrants contribute. Illegal immigrants take. And they'll wind up in blue states. So, got a couple of minutes. All right. There's a documentary out. Very well done. Very well documented. Factual. Has to be to go into that classification. And it talks about homegrown jihad in the United States. It may or may not surprise you to know we currently have 35 jihad training camps in the United States. They are supported by a U.S.-based group called Muslims of the Americas, and it's run by a very powerful and radical Pakistani cleric. And literally, it is about homegrown jihad. These folks are called Soldiers of Allah, and they are trained in explosives, kidnapping, murder, firing weapons, and guerrilla warfare. And they are told, act like you are a friend, then kill him just like from the book. There is one of those in Texas, and it's outside of Houston. I'm not going to get into the whole article, but you need to know that homegrown jihad is a reality. And before I dive into the next set, you need to remember that the founder and supporter backer of these 35 terrorist training camps in the U.S. is a Pakistani cleric. When we come back after the break, I will connect Pakistani terrorist movements to Ferguson, Missouri. It's strange when you really do some homework what kind of dots you can figure out to connect. We're up on the next little break. I get to take a sip of water. So pay attention to the ditty, and I will be right back. Howdy, folks. This is the Doc Owen Show. Welcome back. Before we took our little break, we were talking about a 35 jihadi terrorist training camps here in the United States that were put together and supported by a Pakistani cleric-formed group. Well, it seems that not only are the obvious race baiters working in Ferguson, Missouri, which our little immigration foray the last 72 hours has kind of taken our eye off of that hot spot, but it still remains. We have not heard from the grand jury. We don't know what's going to happen there. We know what we're being told, and that is, if the grand jury fails to indict, it's going to be hell to pay, not just for the citizens of Ferguson, but according to the word, according to the media, and according to the social media and the mainstream media, it's going to be greater St. Louis wide, not just Ferguson. Ferguson is a suburb of St. Louis. Well, it might surprise you to know, this article starts out with the brain trust behind anonymous Operation Ferguson is actually a guy in Pakistan. So there is a Facebook page and there are Twitter feeds that are being run out of Pakistan. He is a Muslim terrorist in Pakistan communicating and revving up the folks in Ferguson. I mean, it's unbelievable. If you put here's what it says: if you put a modern day Bill Ayers ideology together with the social media acumen of Mark Zuckerberg, if you're not familiar, Zuckerberg is the founder of Facebook, and then mixed in some Mid-East Lil Wayne rap music, you might end up with the kid in Pakistan with a Facebook page and access to the internet, able to convince young thugs in Ferguson, Missouri, to rise up in defense of Islam under the auspices of justice for Mike Brown. That's the teenager that got shot and started this whole foray. So he has been fomenting the race war, or, anti-establishment war would be a better way of putting it, all the way from Pakistan via social media. So as we've talked about in the past, there's a way to use it for good and there's a way to use it for bad. And this is one that is using it for bad. As long as we're on Ferguson, and I haven't spent much time about it on the show at all for a number of reasons, but I found this one article also informative. A United Nations official lambasted the entitlement of the parents of the slain Ferguson, Missouri teenager, Mike Brown. The Browns said in their, and by the way, how they got in front of the United Nations Council on Terrorism, not terrorism, what's it called? Against torture, there you go. United Nations Committee Against Torture, one will never know, but they did. They presented their case. The Browns said in their document, "We need answers and we need action. We had to bring it to the UN so they can expose it to the rest of the world. What's going on in small town Ferguson?" The United Nations, however, blasted back at the couple after mere hours of deliberation. In a statement released by senior chairman of the UN's Committee Against Torture, he dismissed the couple's plea in its entirety. Quote, "The sense of entitlement these people have displayed is reprehensible," said the chair member. It is in our opinion, after reviewing all the evidence, that the officer in question committed absolutely no wrongdoing. What struck me about that was the United Nations response to the feeling of entitlement that these folks had with which they presented their case. Unfortunately, that was my first reaction to the situation, and it was exactly why we didn't cover it on the show. What brought it up was connecting the dots from Pakistan. you got to pay close attention, and you have to reach far and wide for information. Do you remember, man, it was so long ago, there was a situation about a really bad flu. I think it's called Ebola. And it kind of went away, didn't it? Are you sure? New York City woman, and this is dated today, New York City woman on Ebola watch list dies bleeding from the mouth. A woman who returned from Guinea 18 days ago and was on an Ebola monitoring list dropped dead in a Brooklyn hair salon yesterday after eyewitnesses said she began bleeding from the mouth and nose. Authorities later asserted the cause of death was an apparent heart attack. I'm no more a medical doctor than I am a lawyer. So I don't wade into a lot of things. I think I would have to wade into that diagnosis of a heart attack. That's not exactly what happens when you have a heart attack. Well, but the authorities, they're the authorities. That's why they are what they are. They're authoritative. That's the authority. That's why they use that word. If you ask me, it's bull sugar. I'd be looking for someplace else to get my hair done. I can assure you of that. I was sent another very, very, very good article by a friend of mine. It is written by a lady by the name of Publius Huldah, Huldah. The title of it is How Our Federal Constitution Secures Our God-Given Rights. Right there, I was hooked. Our Declaration of Independence says the Creator God endowed us with rights, and that the purpose of government is to secure those rights God gave to us. So the government didn't give them to us. They're given to us by God. We are naturally born with certain rights. And the government's job is the United States government's job for sure is to protect those rights. That is a very clear distinction. Get that straight. The government didn't give you shit. God gave you those rights. And it's the government's job to protect those rights. What does this mean? How does the government go about securing God-given rights? The miracle of our federal Constitution was that it created a federal government which, by means of exercising the enumerated powers listed in the Constitution, was enabled to secure our God-given rights in specific ways. It's not that hard, folks. The people that put it together recognized that we all had equal rights given to us by God at birth. They then structured a government to protect those from basically outsiders. If you lived under and worked within the government of the United States, that was one place on earth your God-given rights were protected. And for the longest time, that's why everybody wanted to come here. And they should still want to come here for that reason, but I got a feeling that the number has diminished because our rights are not nearly as well protected as they used to be. The federal government is supposed to secure our right to life. military defense. And this thing quotes Article 1, Section 8, CL, whatever that stands for, 11 to 16 pages. Laws against piracy and other felonies on the high seas. Prosecuting traitors. Protecting us from invasion. Restricting immigration. These are all the things the federal government is supposed to do to secure our right to life. And that most of them are in Article 1 of the Constitution. It is also supposed to secure our property rights by establishing a money system based on gold and silver and by establishing uniform weights and measures. All of these things are in these are protections of our God-given rights. The establishment of bankruptcy courts, the issuing of patents and copyrights to protect our intellectual property. It is supposed to secure our right to liberty with laws against slavery, providing fair trials in federal courts, and obeying the Constitution. It's a very powerful document. There is a very powerful movement going on in the United States to help us get back to the word and the intent of the Constitution. It's about the intent that we have lost. I'm just a little bit ahead of schedule, but before I dive into a little 5 or 10 minute monologue about immigration, I'm going to take another break. So listen to the ditty. I will grab a sip of water, and I'll be right back.
What this world needs is a few more rednecks. People with the nerve to take a stand. What this world needs is a little more respect for the Lord and the law and the working man.
Howdy, folks. This is the Doc Owen Show. Welcome back. We are 45 minutes into it. We have covered a lot of topics, not the least of which was the president's speech tonight on immigration. And I spent a goodly amount of time on Twitter following all the conversations, and both pro and con, and listening to my headset to some of the pundits that were talking about it all day long. I mean, by the showtime, my head was absolutely spinning with input on what I will call hashtag immigration, because hashtag, for those of you not familiar, is basically the pound sign or the number sign on your keyboard. And hashtag or pound or number or whatever you want to call it, Twitter calls it hashtag. Hashtag in front of a word or phrase in social media is how everything is tracked. All right, so if you go to a social media site and you type in hashtag doomsday, then everybody that's talking about doomsday and all they have to say is going to come up on your screen. So if you do hashtag immigration, everybody's opinion, ideas, attitudes on immigration is going to come up. Some of it factual, some of it not. But the main thing is there is a wealth of bad information out there. There's a wealth of inflammatory information. As you know, I work real hard not to get into that. And the reason I do it is twofold. Number one, I like to deliver truth to youth, not a partisan pitch. That's number one. Number two, in order to do that, I have to be able to do my own critical thinking. In other words, I've been around long enough and I've had enough experiences and I have been trained how to do legitimate research. I'm not telling you I'm perfect. I get caught every once in a while with a piece of bull sugar that, I have to discard. But on the whole, I do a pretty good job of it. So I try to come forth with a thought process, a logical thought process, given all of the actual facts. And some of it is based on personal experience. So let's dive into the immigration thing. And if you will remember, if you don't, please go out to the podcast. I must have spent 5 or 6 weeks worth of broadcasts totally focused on this cotton-picking invasion that went on south of the border. I don't remember how long ago, but it wasn't that long ago. The way that the crap flies out of the news cycle so fast nowadays, you can't keep track of anything. You can barely think all the way through something before the next problem or incident or whatever jumps all over it. And you'll notice tonight, I haven't said a word about Gruber. And actually, Gruber is higher up on the list than immigration if you go to Twitter. So Gruber's just going to have to wait. I'm going to assume, well, if you're watching the mainstream media, you don't have a clue what I'm talking about, do you? Look it up for yourself. We're back on immigration. The point is, I grew up in Texas. And I've been growing up in Texas for a long, long time. Illegal immigration at a certain level has been part of our way of life here in Texas all my life. And I'm sure it goes back hundreds of years. The difference is, over the years, not only has it increased, but the problem is, back in the day, not that long ago, when folks came across the Rio Grande into Texas, the first thing they did was assimilate themselves into the local population. They were happy to be here. They were proud to be here. And we were glad to have them because of their attitude, their work ethic, and mostly their desire to be an American citizen. The hard way, the real way, the honest way. And that's not what's going on. Just like the parents of the boy in Ferguson and the UN slapping them down for their sense of entitlement. When one guy steps up in front of the United States and the only TV station that broadcasted is Univision, who is he talking to? And he's giving 5 million plus people a complete sense of entitlement. So he talks about the American way. And his speechwriter even quoted the scripture tonight. But that's not the American way. But they keep coming because administration after administration after administration does exactly what Mr. Obama did. He just did it on steroids compared to the guys in front of him. All the rest of them granted amnesty in the hundreds of thousands. Bush's was like less than 100,000. A specific case of certain individuals. This thing tonight is covering 5 to 10 million people. That's a big cotton-picking difference from a few 100,000 in a country of 300 million. I was at a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and there was a young man there, military vet, who is married to a Hispanic. And they have been working diligently, very diligently, to get her legalized. It is not easy. I have said for many, many years, if we want to fix the immigration system, if we really wanted to fix it, we would fire a lot of people that are in the federal government supposedly providing these services. We would kick their lazy asses out of their chairs, keep them from hiding behind voicemail and bulletproof glass and all this other crap, make them get out there and get the job done. It's not the law. It's the lazy bureaucrats not doing their job. I'm telling you, I know from whence I speak. So they keep piling on more crap that these bureaucrats are not going to do. Or they make it easy on them to say, oh, you don't have to do that anymore because we're not sending those people back anymore. If they would enforce the laws on the books as intended and work like the rest of us in private enterprise, we wouldn't have the problems that we're having. I'd be willing to bet on it. But they're on the government dole. They're probably a member of a government union. They have absolutely no reason to work for a living. All they really have to do is show up. And that's why it takes so long and it's so hard to get a legalization through the system. The other piece of it is, and I know I'm going to get some pushback about being a redneck and insensitive, and you can't imagine the names I'm called on Twitter. So I know immediately when the name calling starts what I'm dealing with. You need to learn to speak English. English in the United States of America is the language of success. You will forever be marginalized if you don't learn English. During the recent elections, I heard in San Antonio that we have a lot of Spanish-speaking folks. If you really press them on it, they can speak English too. They prefer Spanish because they think that I can't understand. They're wrong. But that's for me to know and for them to find out. But when I hear a politician speaking in Spanish, running for an office in the United States, my immediate thought is, if I were Hispanic, I'd be pissed. That is very demeaning. That politician should be working to help the folks understand and work with English so they can get ahead. And maybe they can become a politician. Maybe they can become a leader in their community. But they're not ever going to get above a certain level if they don't learn English. And there's nothing wrong with helping people understand that. It's not being redneck. It's not being prejudiced. If you ask me, it's being Christian and caring, because that I know that that's what is required. And it's going to be required for quite some time. So in talking to this young man, I came up with a phrase that I liked. It's called cultural assimilation. That's what needs to happen. The immigrants that are coming over here, the first thing that needs to happen is cultural assimilation. And then on the dark side of that, if you're not willing to assimilate, then you need to abdicate. So if you're not willing to learn the language, if you're not willing to learn the culture, that doesn't mean you forsake and forgive where you came from. That just means you need to be in tune with local customs. I have long had a practice when I traveled anywhere. I absolutely hated looking like a tourist. I wanted to blend in for two reasons. Number one, for respect of local customs. And number two, so I could feel comfortable and people around me would be comfortable with me being there because I had honored their local customs. So assimilate and abdicate is get out. Just leave. If you don't get this assimilate part, don't try to change us. That's when you're going to get a lot of pushback and you're going to get some attitude. And depending on where you do it, you might get attitude faster than not. And that's not constructive. So rather than try to change us, rather than try to change the natives, you need to assimilate. And you know what? I'm here to tell you, that goes from state to state, too. I mean, if you go over to Louisiana, you better hurry up and kind of change your tone and listen to a little bit different music and start talking a little bit differently and carrying yourself differently, or you're going to stand out and be ostracized. And that's not 200 miles from here, and it's in the United States. But they really resent people coming in there from Texas trying to tell them how to run their business. We resent people coming to Texas from other states. They're attracted here because of our economy. They're attracted here for all the things that make us great and wonderful, part of which is our attitude. And the first thing they do is try to change us. Give me a break. Why are you here in the first place? Join us. Same thing is true nationally as well as internationally. There's my 2 cents. It has been and I told you, remember when we went through the midterm elections, it was going to be a rocky time until the Republicans actually took over the Congress, and it has started. That was the first, I think that was just tonight's little 10 or 12 minutes on immigration I think that was just the first shot across the bow. I think there's more to come. I think it's going to be really tough. And then we're going to have a Republican House and a Republican Senate. And then it's going to get just downright nasty until 2016. So buckle up. We'll have some fun. As you listen to our last little ditty, remember to replace the word rock with the word dock, and I'll be right back to say goodnight.
1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, rock. We're going to rock around the clock tonight. Put your glad rags on. Join me home. We'll have some fun when the clock strikes 1. We're going to rock around the clock tonight. We're going to rock till broad daylight. We're going to rock around the clock tonight.
This is Doc Owen. You have been listening to the Doc Owen Show. I really want to thank you for being here. Go out there, take care, pay attention. God bless. Good night. Thanks.